been probably the longest month of my whole entire life. It feels like eons ago that we did this last one, and it's hard to believe that it was literally just 30 days ago. And so I'm excited to dive into this time, but let's first take a moment to drop in together. So wherever you're at in space and time, feel your shoulders just soften down your back. We are experiencing a new moon this evening into tomorrow morning in real time, and Vedically this moon is in the sign of Pisces, which is a watery emotional sign. And so as you feel your shoulders softened on your back, imagine a waterfall pouring down the top of your head, the back of your neck, down your shoulders, all the way down your spine. This warm, powerful water. It's cleansing away, releasing anything that's impure. And what I mean by impure is not something wrong or dirty. Impure as meaning it's not a crystal that sits into your heart. We have a lot of flashy distractions around us, and it's incredibly easy to lose sight of who we are. And this new moon, you can really think of as this like cosmic bridge between endings and beginnings. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and according to Western astrology, this new moon is in Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. And so feel your awareness start to shift into your solar plexus, just above your belly button. This is where the fire element lives, and literally imagine a fire. My Ayurveda teacher said you can think of your fire, your Agni, as like a campfire, and if you throw wet blankets, impurities onto that fire, what happens is that it starts to diminish. And so we start to remove all of the things disrupting these beautiful flames to burn brightly and boldly, courageously, fearlessly, and those are all the qualities of Aries. And so let this moment in time serve as a bridge, giving yourself permission to leave behind everything that's holding you back. And feel yourself walking towards this beautiful truth, this unveiling of who you are at your core. And it's that at the center of the center of the center of who you are holds this crystal box. And inside of that box holds your courage, your bravery. Inside of this box is your light. Take a deep breath in. And exhale, let it go. We call in our angels, our spirit guides, our ancestors, so that this conversation can be of benefit to not only Sydney and myself, but to and for the entire collective. And so it is. Welcome back. Welcome back. Sydney, yay. Welcome back, my dear. We just pulled a card, and first, before we reveal what this month's card is, take us back to last month. We pulled, and rather
mean, what we're doing here with the tarot and what we did last month is we're really pulling, you know, a collective piece of advice for how to move through the rest of the month. And so with the Empress card last month, we were really given the advice of, you know, kind of sitting back and allowing ourselves to receive what's meant for us, and just allowing, you know, our seeds that we've sown to start to sprout. And I think that it was a big focus on taking care of ourselves, making sure that our needs are met, and also just taking that time to relax and allow things to happen the way that they're supposed to happen. And that was really kind of the advice that we had for last month.
Okay, 2 things coming up for me. I hope I don't forget the second as I explain the first, but if I forget the second, hopefully it will circle back, and if not, it's gone into the beautiful ether. Okay, first, it's incredibly challenging to sit back and just let things or let it grow. But when you were talking about seeing our seeds begin to sprout, I think one thing that I myself and probably many other forget is that the seed is really deep down, and it has to move through a lot of heaviness, a lot of wetness, a lot of discomfort to get even to break up. And then from there, it still takes a very long time for it to bloom.
Yes.
And what I was hearing from that was like, Mandy, you haven't even broken ground yet. And I feel like this month was really slow in a lot of ways. And so then when you said to take care of ourselves, it's always interesting to me, because if I don't like consciously do that, the world around me has an incredibly gifted way of pulling me into that moment anyways. And so, you know, things were a lot slower for me on a lot of capacities, and now, like, just when you said that, it's like, oh, you're just like going through the heaviness, and you just need to be patient. And that's very
Extremely. I feel like that's one of the hardest things to do in this life, is to just sit back and allow things to take their course, you know, but it's necessary. And that really was the piece of advice that we had last month in the midst of these 2 eclipses that are just bringing up utter chaos. So it's almost like we have to sit back in this pretty, everything's gonna be fine energy while there's absolute chaos going on, right? And that's, like I said, the advice. Of course, that's not always what we're going to do, but it's what would serve us best, right?
Yeah. I feel like I did do a pretty good job in terms of like self-care, in the fact that, like we were just talking, like I feel like I've been using food to help ground me right now, and not that I'm like going off the rails, but I'm definitely much more okay with the lack of structure. But I'm definitely, and this might be the Aries energy and the eclipse energy, I'm definitely feeling like, okay, like a little fire's lit under my ass. It's like, okay, you had your time, it was beautiful, and I tried not to beat myself up for it. But now it's like, and it's that spring energy, it's this rebirthing, and that's what we're really going through, is this massive rebirth. And it's like, okay, now I'm starting to feel, but the cool thing is that when I feel myself starting to judge myself, I can pull myself back out of it easier and faster, and then have like more compassion now, which was not the case even last year probably. So it's nice to be that. And you had actually just talked about a story where you were like elevated out of your consciousness, and it's like, I wonder if that's just like, if most people, if everyone can experience that, but we've just like trained ourselves not to go there. And and that also might be why like psychedelics and things like that are a little bit feared by people because it's that space. But if you think of a ton of, I'm sure, ancient cultures and civilizations, that was like an incredibly vital piece of expansion and evolution.
Yeah. I mean, they were literally put themselves in those alter states in order to receive that divine intuition and that divine information, I guess, that would help lead them further down the path.
Did you see that they just came out with LiDAR? Don't quote me on this because I am a creative, not an academic. But under the pyramids of Giza. Now, let me preface this as well. When I was nursing my first daughter, I went down this tunnel of, I think it was called like Ancient Civilizations. It was on Gaia and Seasons. I just watched all of them. And they were talking about the potential that the pyramids of Giza and the the Temple of Isis, was actually a power plant. And the Temple of Isis was like the holder of the power pillars.
Yeah.
And I was like telling my husband, and he's just always like, yeah, babe, sure, like go into space. And I'm always like, well, we don't know, like it could be. But so anyways, I'm telling him about the pyramids not being tombs, that they're actually these like energies, like a power plant. And so literally, like I think last week, they just revealed this study that was done where they took imaging in the ground. It's like 600 kilometers deep are these massive massive pillars that have coils wrapped around them. And then even below that, there's these gigantic boxes that are under it, and then they're all connected together. And it's like, it's more like understanding to be like, oh, okay, this is like a lot deeper, and they're much more civilized and like advanced beyond our years. And it's probably because they're tapping into this advancement that lives inside of us.
Yes.
And yet we don't.
I love that you brought this up. Religion is one of my minors. And I remember years ago I took a class, Ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, and I wrote an 11-page paper about the pyramids. And why they're built, how they were built, all of these things. And the truth is, no, they weren't really tombs. They were basically these buildings that were crafted in such a way that they were meant for the Egyptians to communicate with the heavens. So there's all these different like air tunnels, wind tunnels, and it's all so that whatever vibrations, whatever energy they were culminating within that would be lifted up into the sky. And also, it's important to know that most of these pyramids were also placed
in constellations.
Absolutely, yes, in a very particular trajectory, which is so insane to think that there were human beings back then who were able to construct these pyramids on these exact locations. Where would they even have the calculations to be able to place these in perfect alignment?
And how are they, like I saw it was like 3 different temples. It was like the pyramids of Giza, one of the Mayan temples, and then there was like a 3rd one from not in those 2 areas. And they're set up the exact same way, same size, like mirror of the sky. I've always thought that shit is just so fascinating because I watched a story on Atlantis, and that they think that they found the location, and it's like the Eye of Africa. And like the thing that my husband and I were just so mind blown about was that it was like the exact measurements, like laid out of what Plato had written about, and like to a T. And it's like, it gives me, I always just get so giddy about it, and like humans are so fucking cool. And then I always joke about like the reptilian humanoids, the Sumerians, and Blake always like laughs at me because he's like, whatever. And I'm like, there's just like people out there that just have like lizard energy and vibes, and it's like, that's a reptilian person in like the most like compassionate way, because you're just like, I really do feel like people embody the energies of their ancestors, and it's just like, I got to go down, and it's just like, that shit is so fascinating to me. Okay, so when do you think that, this is just a side question, do you think or do you know that cultures used something similar to tarot, but it wasn't necessarily called tarot, obviously, in their culture, but did they have these similar ideas?
Sure, I guess like tarot's different. Modern tarot's different in the sense that it uses like the archetypes, right? But I think I mentioned this in the last podcast too. There's obviously very ancient forms of divination, right? And tarot can be used for divination. It can be used for, communing with the spirits in order to gain information, but it can also be used for self-discovery. So that's kind of what I aim my tarot readings towards. But yeah, in terms of ancient cultures using different forms of divination, you have scrying, you have bone throwing, you have runes, those are some of the more ancient forms, and I think it goes much deeper than that as well. But like we were talking about earlier before class earlier today, we were discussing, the eclipse as being one of these foretelling omens that these heliocentric type cultures, which are, cultures that kind of have a central sun god that they worship, they believed that, these eclipses were foretelling of the death of a king, which, obviously that could mean a real and physical king, but in more applicable terms, I would think that that king is more so representative of the sun and the solar energy, that life-giving energy, right? And so when we think about the sun card in the tarot as an archetype, like this is that light which guides us forward. And in a way, it's what brings us life, what gives us life, so it is God in essence, right? So when this eclipse happens, it's like for a little bit of time, God is pushed into the darkness, or that part of us that brings us life is pushed into the darkness. And I don't think that it's done for no reason at all. In fact, I think it's done for really important reasons, that we can do that inner work, that inner reflection that's necessary for us to further align with the being that we are becoming. Because eclipses are all about, these endings and these new beginnings, and I think that that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
I just went down a tangent there.
I love every second of it. I do, and it's also like, we're in the spring, and this is like just at the spring equinox, like a week ago or whatever, and 10 days ago, and it's like, when I heard you say that, it's almost like shoving your ego into the shadow, and then like when your ego is gone, then what is remaining is like this vulnerable, emotional part of you that's like tough to go to. And like this month has been so incredibly long, and I feel like that's just the universe saying you need to like put your ego to the back in all the great ways that the ego shows up. Getting at, like I was saying, I feel like I'm just not as motivated this month. And when you said pushing God into the back, it's almost like, well, yeah, we're pushing your ego is what keeps you out of bed. Your ego is what keeps you driven, and so it's interesting that you say that, because it's like, oh, okay, she's just taking a seat in the back, and then now you just have this open heart that is like not protected. And so it's been a turbulent month, I feel like. Hopefully for all, especially since we have these 2 eclipses.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, the lunar eclipse was kind of partnered with K2. And K2 is a star, and it really embodies like your karmic patterning. And so this eclipse in the solar is with Rahu, and he is like your dharma, your life's purpose. And so for me, my whole life, I feel like I have been running from my dharma. And there's like a Eleanor Franklin, doesn't matter, I'll find it and we'll post it. But she says something like, basically, we self-sabotage because we're like afraid of what we could be. And I feel like I've done it my whole entire life. Like I was really good at swimming, and when I got really good at it, I did something else. And then really good at soccer, and then it's like, okay, I'm done with soccer, and I'm super good at art. And then it's like, okay, I'm done with art, I'm really good at being a drug addict. And then it's like, I'm done with that, and then it's like, you know, all these things. And it's come to a point in my life where I know that like this is my dharma, but like loosening the grip around the self-sabotage, and really at the core of it is like the fear of becoming what I truly am. And one, am I ready to step into the responsibility of that? And then it's like, okay, well, what else am I running from? And I knew a million miles a minute, and so this month has like forced me to slow down and start to really think on those things. And it's just like, it hurts. It's painful to look at yourself and be like really honest.
Oh yeah. I feel like there's been so many shadowy aspects that have just come. I told you the other day I was just falling, I think the night before last, for no reason. You know, it was just all of these old things, all of these old memories, these old wounds just coming up to the surface, and I was like, what's going on? Yeah, the eclipses. And then I'm talking to, you know, my mom, my best friends, and they're all going through that same thing. You know, we're collectively experiencing all of this. And most people just aren't really, you know, attuned to it. They're, or just choosing not to pay attention to that, which is fine, you know, to each their own. But I think that when you do choose to attune to that energy, there's you make a great space for healing, you know, and I think that that's what these eclipses are all about. You know, they are really these opportunities for you to level up, you know, and to let go of these things that aren't serving you anymore, so that you can step into this person that you always wanted to become. But it takes a looking at that shadowy aspect of yourself, that part of yourself where God is hidden, and you have to bring out, you know, that aspect of you that you don't love all the time. But that's the work that has to be done.
I had a teacher say that to me. She was like, you gotta go in there, you gotta just give her a hug, maybe. And I experienced, the first time I really experienced like going in, it's interesting because we were just talking about like parent child work. And I'm sure that I had like worked with it before and just wasn't attuned to working with this kind of like dialogue with myself and like visualization of myself. But I had went back to Chicago last year for a friend's wedding, and I moved away from Chicago, and I rarely went back. And that was one, to protect myself, because there was just so much temptation there in that city, and I was a massive piece of shit in that city for a majority of the time that I was there. The beginning and the end, I really like was this, you know, beacon of light. But for a long time, I was have lost it, and it's very easy to slip into the darkness.
Absolutely.
And just let the ego drive the car.
It's so much easier.
It's a lot. Sometimes it's a lot funner too.
It is.
And that's
really
where
hard to hold yourself accountable.
it's like a tantrum, and that's why it is, because it's pulling you in, and then it's actually the discipline and the structure that grant you access to this next level. But I was in Chicago with my husband, going to like one of my great friends, like weddings, and I told myself, I'm like, you know what, Mandy, like you don't, like, that's not you anymore. You're a completely different person. And so just like when you're there, go to that instead of like pushing her away in shame and like cringe. Let go to her and like give her a hug. And there were many times as like memories and places like started flushing back, it was like instead of repelling her, I was like, come here, sister. And it was great, and the trip itself was amazing, and I felt like I needed that to go in and just like, and that, I mean, shoot, I was in my 20s, so I'm not this like little girl, but I'm this little girl. You go in, you just like give her a hug, and so I feel like that's been kind of this month has been a lot of that, and so it's like, are you willing to go there?
Right.
And most of us are not, and then that's why we, have all these different vices, and we stay so busy, and so I know that you had said that this was just like a little bit slower month for you as well, and it's like the ego in the back is like, what the fuck is going on, and then like the heart in the front is like, oh, I can breathe right now, and I have space.
Yeah, like the biggest thing for me is I thought to myself, like, all these things are coming out of all these memories, and like, I already fucking healed this. Like, I obviously didn't, I'm like, I've been working on those things for years. Like, I was okay with them. Why are they all coming up to the surface now? It's like, okay, well, what are you missing? And I think that's what these times are all about. That's what these eclipses are for. It's to show you those pieces that you are missing so that you can integrate them and become more whole within yourself. But, like you said, it's fucking hard.
It's hard. And sometimes too, it's like, that's why having a tarot reader or mentor, health counselor, all spiritual guide, whoever, is so important, because I had a friend just the other day send me a Mel Robbins podcast. She was getting, I think she was getting interviewed by like a doctor of some sort, and she was talking about a trauma that had happened to her when she was younger. And she said that, a kid, she woke up and the kid was on top of her, and she felt, was being violated. And he was saying, okay, that's a part of the trauma, but that's not the trauma that you're holding on to. And so they're continuing on the conversation, and then it comes out that, she had never told anyone about it. And so she didn't feel safe. She didn't have anyone she felt safe. And so he was saying that in fact is the trauma.
Yes.
And then the rest of it is obviously very traumatic and things you have to work through, but the actual root of the trauma is not the kid that was on top of her, it's that she never felt safe with the people around her. And it's like, I feel like that is like what this eclipse is all about, is like, okay, I feel you, I see you, and I know that was probably really painful, but we need to go a little bit deeper.
Right.
And I'm thinking of it now in reverse terms of the seed. It's like, we have to go, it's like, oh, you think that you rip out, a weed at the top of the grass, but really it goes so much deeper, and you have to dig and dig. So you think that you peeled it off, you think you ripped it off, and then like, all of a sudden you're like, where the fuck did this come from? I thought I got rid of it, and you gotta get in there, get your hands dirty, and get like deep in there and really pull the roots out.
And that's the hard part. Because you're like, I didn't expect that to be the real problem that's going on here, the self-abandonment in it, it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to do, but it's like I said, the necessary work that has to be become that whole person that you're seeking to become.
There'll always be a void if you're unwilling to go into the vastness. And so, going into the vastness, that's what this full moon is about, the dark sky, the vastness. This eclipse is shadowing the sun, and so it's dark. And so as we're in this vastness and we're swimming in this pool of uncertainty, but also opportunity and potential, which is really awesome that they turn all together, because nothing is separate. We have to have one extreme to experience the other. And so as we're swimming in this vastness, what you got for us this month?
Okay, well, I pulled, of course, another major arcana, because it just seems to want to fly out of my deck every time. But I pulled the Temperance card, which is, in my opinion, incredibly fitting. You know, the Temperance is all about balance. It's about moderation. But the way that I see this, you know, you've got this angel here pouring water between two cups, and the water element here really speaks to me about emotions, and it's everything that we're talking about, these emotions that are surfacing of our past, of our shadow side, right? This part of us that we don't necessarily want to see. This card is talking about the integration that I think I've said that word like 3 different times now, and it's really the essence of it. It's integrating this light and dark aspect of yourself in order to fully heal. And I think that, you know, the advice at this time would be to really pay attention to those feelings that are surfacing, that are rising, and to also know when it's time to stop digging. I think that's really important, because sometimes you can push yourself a little bit too far, especially if you're feeling things like trauma and whatnot, and that's what's surfacing. You can really burn yourself out on healing too. And I think that's super important to let people know, is because a lot of people, you know, just, they fall face forward into the healing journey, and no one's there to tell them, like, you can take breaks in this too. So it's learning how to moderate that, and know when it's time to take a step back so that you can recalibrate and recenter yourself.
That is super hard. I think I've dug way past, and potentially, you know, it's like there, so you see that you're digging past it, but you still, and then all of a sudden you go, oh fuck, I didn't realize I got that far.
Yeah.
And it's that recalibration, I think, for me, is so hard. It's like, especially being someone that's an all or nothing kind of person, coming into a space of balance is challenging. And I feel like, it's just because we were talking about like weight, and you know, I range in different weight sizes, and I used to weigh myself because I was obsessed with the number on the scale, and I think that is definitely still there, but it's not in the front seat anymore. She's like in the trunk, in a bag, in another bag, but she's still there.
Absolutely.
And now I just think it's interesting because I'll look, and aggravatively really too, like this time last year, I was about 10 pounds lighter, almost exactly, than I am now. And I think back at that time in my life and how scattered and spacey and airy and light that I was, and ungrounded and unsatisfied with life that I was. I fast forward to myself now, and how even this month in particular, I've been enjoying the pleasure of things. And I think of Lakshmi, the goddess Lakshmi, and she's just abundant, and she's curvy, and she's beautiful, and she's just like sitting in this like blanket of just like lusciousness. I feel like this month has like, I've done that in a sense, and then there's all these other aspects, and I was actually, I can't remember what it's called, it's like wisdom book or something, but it was like an ad on Instagram, and so, don't quote me, literally saw it as an ad, but it like made total sense when I watched it. It was talking about, okay, and we know Egyptian history. Is it the Horus?
Horus?
It's like the symbol that they have.
The eye of Horus?
Maybe it's literally it's kind of like a cross. It actually looks like a womb, and it's like a cross. It's like a it could be. It's like, is it the symbol?
The arm?
Always.
The symbol of life?
And they're holding it and like all.
Oh yeah, the arm.
Okay,
It's
so
the arm.
okay. So it's talking about that symbol,
Mhm.
and that it's actually the like fallopian tubes.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the womb.
Yep.
And then it was talking about the zodiac. Yeah, of course. And they carry it around. It's at every significant, like,
I think that the Ankh is in
documented.
tarot in one of the cards. I can't remember which one. But yeah, there's a lot of Egyptian symbolism in it.
And it was talking about it being the womb and creation, and that divinity and Shakti and Kundalini are like the power source. And so I'm thinking of it in terms of what you had just said, putting, the ego, the king, Shiva in the back, and we let the feminine rise up. And so they're talking about that's the womb, and then it was talking about the zodiac and how the zodiac is making up the baby, the heat creating of all of the archetypes of the zodiac. So then I'm thinking Ayurvedically, okay, we've got all the elements of nature, they're spiraling into this dosha, and it's creating like who we are as people.
Yeah.
And that's your property in Ayurveda, and that is like you at your truth. And so it's just like, does this card suggest anything in terms of like awakening the feminine and making that step into that?
I would say it more so speaks of balancing the feminine and masculine energies together. Like I said, this is a card all about balance, and balancing those two energies is crucial, especially when you're doing shadow work and integration and all of that. Like that's the whole meaning of the game, is being able to balance those two major energies that.
Well, and I think it's interesting that when you say balance, and it's like, okay, we're hours away from a solar eclipse, and it's when, if you don't know anything about eclipses, it's when the sun, the moon, and the earth are all in balance. They're in the same alignment for a brief moment of time. And you pull this card of balance, and it's just like, oh, perfect.
I just love that I felt so pressed too. I was like, I need to pull this card right now before we start this podcast. Like, I don't need to pull it during it. It was just, it needed to come out. And I remember
And you
thinking
jumped out too,
yeah, and I remember thinking to myself before I came here, this is going to be another major arcana, because we're going through such a pivotal moment in the cosmos right now. So of course it would come out this way,
We're also in Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde in Aries. And we are in like this play between fire and water, Aries and Pisces. Do you follow much Vedic astrology?
Not enough. I would like to know more.
I would too. Stars, the nakshatras.
I just started getting into like nakshatras, and I just learned about mine more recently, but I intend to learn more about Vedic astrology.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because so many people don't like Vedic astrology because it's the actual accurate astrology in the sky, and so a lot of people's signs that are on the cusp have shifted.
So then are you Leo?
I would technically be a Leo, but what's interesting is that my rising sign, which is the most important sign in Vedic astrology, is Virgo.
Oh.
Which my sun sign in Western astrology is Virgo. So it's like I have this.
Is your rising in Western astrology still Virgo?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh wait, I don't think so. I think my rising is.
Because mine, I feel like mine stayed the same with when I looked at my charts, because I have Scorpio in my rising, and I think I was still Scorpio rising. But I will say that I was born on the 17th of September, so
I'll have to look.
I didn't shift. Like, my birthday is the beginning of Virgo, so I stayed in Virgo. So Vedic astrology, the Yes,
sign for us
we're
to
gonna do
do.
that. I was just thinking about that earlier
But
today.
it would be really interesting to like have a Western and a Vedic that were friends, because from my understanding they're like at odds with each other, because you know we're such tribal people.
Yeah.
Mine was right and yours was wrong. But I would love to talk to and like really understand. So my understanding is like it's like 7-degree difference, because the Earth, we've like tilted off rotation like 7 degrees or whatever. And so the Vedic astrology backed it up 7 degrees. Which so then like your whole, and then your chart is read completely different, and the things that are important in Vedic astrology aren't at the forefront of importance in Western astrology, and we're so used to, I think it's called the tropical zodiac in Western, and people are just like unwilling to go into the Vedic side, but I think it's really interesting because they usually do play very well together.
Yeah.
Where it's like today, this new moon is in the sign of Pisces in Vedic and Aries in Western, and Pisces is the end of the zodiac, it's the endings, it's emotional, it's getting into the work, and then Aries is the beginning of the zodiac, and it's all about motivation and like getting stuff done, rebirthing. Like it's just like how when people say that they don't believe this, it's like it is laid out. How is it not?
My favorite thing is when people get their charts read and they're like, this actually is so neat.
How did you know that?
And it's like, you know, it's a lot more than just your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign. Like, there's so many layers to it, and when you really start to understand it, you know. My knowledge of the zodiac and of astrology in general is good. I would say it's still pretty base at best, but I've spent, you know, a good amount of years having to study it, and I think there's so much astrology within tarot too, so at least understanding astrology at a basic level is almost necessary when you're reading tarot. But we need to get going on those classes. I'm like, should I study the Vedic and you study the Vedic and I'll study the Western, and we'll just go side by side?
Yeah.
Let the girls play.
For real, because I mean, I think that would be a great benefit, because I really think like I've never used calculus. I don't even think I ever took a calculus class, but algebra, all of these things, like I never used, especially since we have computers in our hands now. If they taught tarot, if they taught Ayurveda, if they taught astrology in schools, how different the world would be.
Yeah.
Like even today in class, it's a room full of chicks. We all either have just gotten our cycles or about to get our cycles. And that is how usually all the women would bleed together on the new moon. And the healer women that were actively healing would bleed with the full moon. And so most women, it's a sign of like fertility, health, abundance, prosperity, that you are synced up with the new moon. And so having all of us very much on this like synced phase of the moon cycle is so mind-boggling to me that like we always forget that we're just animals.
Oh yeah.
And that we're just very lucky that our consciousness expanded. Because it is, when you can like attune to the rhythms of nature, of the planets, of the tarot, of all these things, like just how much more like jaw-dropping life is. And even like my grandfather passed yesterday, and to find that balance of devastation, but yet how absolutely beautiful it was to care for someone that I cared so much about. And he was the kind of guy where it was like you couldn't get him a gift because he had everything, and if he wanted it, he'd get it himself. He was a very prideful man, he never showed weakness, he was 92, and so this was back in the day where that was like ingrained in you as a person. He was a warrior, and I know how painful it was for him to have that stripped from him, but how great it was for us to be able to care for him in a way that we've never been able to do before, and how that's like life, is finding this balance between the shadow and the light.
Well, and it's, that's such a powerful thing that you just said, because being able to find that balance in the midst of something really hard is kind of what this is all about. Because it's, once you start to, really play into this temperance energy, this balancing of light and dark energy, nothing can really affect you anymore. You see everything in its divine and right place at all times. And so the more work that you do, the more integration that you do, the easier it becomes when life gets harder. When there's, more things that go awry, or there's more people that you lose, or whatever life has to throw at you. And that's kind of the point of it all, right? Is to become impenetrable.
Yeah. We were just talking about birthdays, and my 30th birthday, I remember sitting at the Havana garage, I think that's what it's called downtown, it's like a cigar shop. And we were sitting outside. And maybe it might have been even before my 30th birthday, so maybe it was my 29th, maybe it was my Saturn return. And I remember sitting out there and talking to Blake, and I was like, I just need to figure out how I can be like an island of like peace, no matter what waves are crashing upon my shore.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like probably 4 or 5 years ago. And so to be able to be at this place of peace when these two kind of polar opposites are happening at the same time, it's just going back to the seed. It's like, okay, I've only broken, that was like a tiny breakthrough. And so now it's like I still have so much more to go to get to the blooming. Yeah. And that is how long it takes. And if we don't slow down, we don't even see that we've broken ground. And then like you said, and then it's like, then you just grow, and then you die, and then you have to start back over. And it's that self-sabotage too, that's just starting back over. Ugh. It is a lot. It's just like so much. So what would you say, and I'll go into it too, but what would you say this month we can do to find those balances?
I would say, really paying attention to those emotions that are coming up to the surface and actually allowing them to run their course, as opposed to either trying to forget about them or trying to soothe them in some kind of way. Just let them happen. I feel like sometimes when we push against that current of emotion, it ends up backfiring, or we push it back for a later time that, it comes up in inappropriate time, or, the wrong kind of setting or scenario. And so really allowing things to happen and allowing these emotions to surface and feeling them when they do is super important, I think, in terms of integration. But in terms of like real things that you could do that are like physical actions that you could do, moderating yourself, making sure that you're not overindulging, that you're not eating too much, not drinking too much, not doing too much of anything. That's really what temperance is all about. So I think we're all kind of being advised to hold ourselves accountable for the things that might be coming up for us, and really allowing ourselves to, I would say, kind of be in this place of inner balance.
I keep thinking of brahmacharya and the 8 limbs of yoga, and that has been misinterpreted for a long time. For when it's been interpreted through the lens of colonialism, it is interpreted as abstinence. And in a more kind of feminine approach to the interpretations, it actually means like the wise use of your sexual energy, the wise use of your creative energy. And I remember my Ayurveda teacher posing this question that I ask myself, my clients, my friends, my students all the time. It's like, what is strengthening you? What is giving you energy? And what is weakening you? What is depleting you of your energy? And do less of what's depleting you and weakening you. And do more of what's strengthening you and giving you light. And it's interesting too, you just did this Kundalini practice, and in Kundalini it's like, lift your root lock, your mula bandha. And really what that is doing is like reminding you to like hold that energy in. There's like leaky prana, and people are just like leaking energy. And I think of my SUV that's like sitting busted in my parents' garage right now, is like leaking coolant.
Yeah.
And so it's not functioning properly, and it actually like smells pretty terrible, and it's like the car isn't working. And so what is it doing? It's just sitting dormant in my parents' garage. And that is like what we're doing when we don't have balance.
Right.
We're our potential, our light, our what we have to offer the world, our dharma, which is what this eclipse is in, this moon is in this like dharmic field. It's like we're doing a disservice not only to ourselves but to everyone by just letting ourselves sit in a garage broken.
Right.
But it's easier for most people to put it in the garage, turn the light off, shut the door, don't go back to it. That's the problem with most of us, is that we don't let ourselves go to that place.
Yeah.
And so sitting in that is, and finding balance in that.
Right, and really knowing when it's time to take action or to be inactive in certain situations. I think that's really important. What temperance is really all about.
The discernment is
huge. It is, but I think it's, you know, if you can intend for that information to come to you or that ability to come to you, it'll make it a lot easier to navigate, right? And sometimes it's as easy as saying it out loud, that that's what you want. That's what you want to will into your existence.
I feel like my discernment didn't get really noticed in any capacity until I started to like really regularly practice Kundalini. I feel like it was really like this Kundalini just in itself, and as you develop as a practitioner of it, student of it. I had this teacher, Tracy Stanley, and she was talking about Vasana, and that is basically the fog, the gunk that's in your way of seeing your own vision. And so she was talking about it in terms of like you're on a road trip and you're driving and bugs, dirt, all this stuff that's on your windshield, and it starts to put these layers of filter on your vision. And so over time, you're driving for so long, that becomes your reality. That becomes what you see. And then you get out of the car and you're like, oh, I'm gonna clean the window. Or you go in, go to the bathroom, get food, and you come back out and you start driving, and all of a sudden, like, you're like, God damn it, I forgot to wash the fucking window. And so then it's like that keeps happening. And it's like, that is, like, for me, Kundalini, like, clears all of that out. And then it's like, oh, whoa. Like, when I got LASIK done, I remember calling my grandma, and I was like, I lived in Denver at the time, and I was like, I can see the mountains. And my grandma's like, you couldn't see those. Like, those are very big. And I was like, I mean, I knew they were there, but I couldn't like see them. So, yes.
Yeah, I can relate.
And I mean, that, I feel like is why Kundalini is so powerful and to practice is so misunderstood. Is that it does just that. Is it takes the filter off. It's your windshield wiper. And then you see the world differently. You start to see people differently. You see how they behave. You see how you behave. And you're able to sit in that space with yourself because Kundalini is fucking uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable, but it's, again, necessary if you want to level up, if you want to take that next step.
And you think like, I look so fucking dumb, just like flailing my arms around right now. I think like all we have these big windows in the studio, and I mean it's a Friday night.
I know at one point there was like kids watching us.
Just watch, and it's like, you know, we're just flailing our arms around, breathing hard, chanting, and it's like that discomfort. And that's why I love sculpt so much, strength classes, because it's that fucking discomfort that then when you go into these hard areas of like sitting at your grandfather's deathbed, going deep internally to like clear out these wounds, it's like you know that you have the capacity to withstand and endure because you've done it on your mat.
Yes.
And then that, so it's like it's so much more than just like flailing your arms around or doing a push-up. It's so much fucking more.
That's really a prime example of like that as opposed to below, as within, so without. So it's like when you're doing that kind of work on the external level, of course it's going to reflect internally. You know?
Okay, so do Kundalini yoga, find these ways to balance, go inward. What other advice as our resident tarot goddess mama do you give for us in this next lunation?
Be gentle with yourself. Be so gentle. I feel like this has been such a hard period for me, you know. Personally, I can only imagine how it is for everyone else since we're all just an extension of one another. So I would say be easy with yourself, and you know, this kind of inner healing, this inner work takes a lot of time. So don't think that you can get it all done at once, and don't think that you're healed just because you said that you healed yourself, you know, all those years ago, and then you weren't thinking about that thing anymore because it might just surface, and that's okay. So I think learning to sit with that will make it really be okay, because it's sitting in that discomfort of those emotions that will really create that space for you to make some new ones and actually let those things go, or rather let them serve you as a change, for change.
I love that. The Kriya for conquering limiting beliefs, the Subha Kriya, Surya Kriya, the Kriya to balance your hormones. That one was really good for you too. All of these different Kriyas, and maybe it's not Kundalini yoga, maybe it's hiking, maybe it's weightlifting, maybe it's vinyasa, maybe it's, you know, golfing. I know that is for my husband. Maybe it's whatever it is, but finding something that you can support yourself on this journey, because we are on a rock that's spinning, floating in the universe, and now they think that maybe the universe is actually inside of a black hole of another universe. And so who fucking knows?
At this point.
Who knows? Until next time, my friends, let us know if you need anything. You can contact Sydney for readings this month. Reach out to me if you want to move or chat about anything and all things yoga, Kundalini, Ayurveda. Your Soul Arcana chicks, signing off. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is so good.
That was